Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Back in December 2020, my dad decided to put my grandmother in a nursing home. Now, you might think that's a pretty normal thing to do for an elderly relative, but trust me, the reasons behind it were anything but normal. See, my aunt, let's call her Karen because, well, you'll see why, had been taking care of my grandmother. And by taking care, I mean she'd been neglecting her so badly that my poor grandma had been in the hospital 3 times in just 2 months. Once for a nasty urinary tract infection, another time because Karen had the brilliant idea of using duct tape to secure grandma's diaper. Yeah, you read that right. And the last time because she left a heating pad on grandma's back overnight, giving her second-degree burns. Dad didn't want to do it, but he knew if he didn't step in, the state would. So, into the nursing home grandma went. Little did we know this was just the beginning of the Karen saga. Fast forward to October 2021 and guess who ends up in a nursing home herself? Yep, Karen. Apparently she'd learned nothing from what happened with grandma and managed to burn herself with a heating pad. But did she get help right away? Of course not. She waited until it got infected before seeking treatment. In January 2022, my grandmother passed away at 94. Now you'd think this would be a time for the family to come together and grieve, right? Wrong. This is where things really started to go off the rails. When Dad started going through Grandma's affairs in February, he uncovered a mess that would make your head spin. Karen, in her infinite wisdom, had only been paying the electric and cable bills. Property taxes? Nah, who needs those? She hadn't paid them since December 2020. But wait, it gets better. Dad also discovered 2 massive liens on the house, totaling almost $200,000. One was from the nursing home because, surprise surprise, Karen hadn't been paying them either. The other, well, that's a doozy. Karen had somehow convinced my grandmother to take out a home equity loan supposedly for a car. She was meant to take about $6,000. Instead, she went behind grandma's back and took the full $100,000 the bank offered. And get this, she never made a single payment on the loan because she thought loans were just free money from banks. I wish I was joking. We still don't know what happened to the other $94,000, but we're pretty sure it went straight into the pockets of the local casinos. Oh, and did I mention she had access to Grandma's bank account? By the time Grandma passed, it was practically empty. Now you'd think this would be enough drama for one family, right? But no, Karen had more tricks up her sleeve. Sometime between January and March 2022, she convinced one of her friends to move into Grandma's empty house. Why? She thought it would prevent the house from being sold if someone was living in it. Yeah, that's not how it works, Karen. When Dad found out, it was a whole new level of mess. Karen tried to claim the guy was there to take care of her cats. Even after she was court-ordered to hand over the cats to Dad, don't worry, they're safe and in good homes now, the guy refused to leave. When Dad confronted Karen's friend about leaving the house, the friend stubbornly insisted that Karen had given him permission to live there forever. He even claimed that Karen had said Dad didn't have the courage to kick him out. Dad, maintaining his composure, informed the friend that he needed to leave by May 1st, or he'd be evicted. The friend, clearly misinformed, tried to argue that disabled people couldn't be evicted, citing Karen as his source of information. Spoiler alert, you absolutely can evict a disabled person if they're living somewhere illegally. The guy ended up having to move in with his daughter, who's now not speaking to Karen. Can't imagine why. But before he left, he made sure to take some parting gifts, valuable jewelry that Karen had told him to steal. We eventually got it back, but not without another legal battle. All this drama meant we missed out on selling the house during a massive housing boom. Instead, we had to sell during a slump, getting almost $150,000 less than it was worth. And even then, Karen tried to drag things out by refusing to sell or get rid of her furniture. In the end, after all the legal fees and paying off the lien from Karen's free money loan, Dad ended up with just under $60,000 and Karen got just under $50,000. But here's the kicker. Around this time, Karen was deemed unfit to make decisions for herself by a judge and her doctors. To avoid losing her inheritance to the nursing home, she signed it over to Dad. Karen passed away on August 1st at 68. Years of smoking, ignoring her diabetes, and refusing necessary surgery finally caught up with her. We didn't have a funeral, just had her cremated and gave her ashes to her older daughter. You'd think that would be the end of it. Nope. Karen's younger daughter tried to sue Dad for the rest of her mother's inheritance. Thankfully, that got shut down pretty quick since the money had already been signed over to Dad. When it was all over, Dad expressed his disbelief that the ordeal had finally come to an end. I agreed, noting that it had been a long 4 years. Dad commented on how Karen always had a way of making things complicated, to which I replied that was putting it mildly. We then discussed how at least Grandma's house was finally sold, though Dad lamented the poor timing. I brought up the other issues we'd faced, like the stolen jewelry, the squatter, and the loans. Dad sighed, expressing his relief that it was all done and that there would be no more surprises from Karen. I jokingly suggested that with our luck, she might have left a long-lost evil twin somewhere, causing Dad to laugh and tell me not to even joke about such a thing. There is no moral really. Sometimes life just comes at you in the form of an entitled relative, and all you can do is hang on for the ride and hope you come out the other side with your sanity intact. I've been driving school buses for over a decade now. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills and gives me a sense of purpose. I take pride in getting kids to and from school safely every day. My route covers a good chunk of the suburbs, and I've gotten to know most of the families along the way. That fateful morning started like any other. I woke up early, had my coffee, and headed to the depot to start my route. Everything was going smoothly until I reached the last stop before the school. As I pulled up to the curb, I noticed a woman frantically waving her arms and running towards the bus. Her kid was nowhere in sight. I hesitated for a moment, but I knew I couldn't wait. We were already running a bit behind schedule, and I had a bus full of kids who needed to get to school on time. I closed the doors and started to pull away when I heard a loud bang on the side of the bus. I looked in my side mirror and saw the woman glaring at me, her face red with anger. I shook my head and kept driving. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. About halfway to the school, I noticed a car tailgating the bus dangerously close. It was swerving back and forth, trying to get around me. I recognized the driver as the woman from the bus stop. My heart started racing as I realized this wasn't going to end well. I picked up the radio to call dispatch. I explained the situation, describing the aggressive driver following me too closely and trying to force me to stop. Dispatch acknowledged my message and asked if I could safely pull over. I responded negatively, explaining that I had a full bus of kids and didn't think it was safe to stop with the driver acting so erratically. Dispatch understood and informed me they were alerting the police. They instructed me to keep driving, stay on the line, and keep them updated. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but it was getting harder by the second. The woman behind me was now honking nonstop and flashing her lights. I could see the kids in the bus getting scared. One of the older kids spoke up, asking what was going on and why the car was chasing us. I tried to reassure the children, telling them not to worry and to stay in their seats, promising we'd be at school soon. But I knew we wouldn't make it to school without incident. The woman was getting more aggressive by the second. Suddenly, she swerved into the oncoming lane and sped up, pulling alongside the bus. I could see her screaming and gesturing wildly. She rolled down her window and started yelling at me. She demanded that I stop the bus immediately, accusing me of leaving her kid behind and calling me names. I pleaded with her to back off, warning her that she was putting everyone in danger. She shouted back that she didn't care and that I was going to pay for this. Before I could react, she jerked her steering wheel towards the bus. I tried to swerve away, but it was too late. Her car slammed into the side of the bus, sending us careening towards the sidewalk. I gripped the wheel with all my strength, desperately trying to keep the bus upright. By some miracle, I managed to bring the bus to a stop without tipping over. The kids were screaming and crying, but a quick glance told me no one was seriously hurt. I breathed a sigh of relief, but it was short-lived. The woman had gotten out of her car and was storming towards the bus, still yelling. I quickly stood up and blocked the entrance. I warned her to stay back and informed her that the police were on their way. She continued yelling, saying she didn't care about the police and accusing me of leaving her kid behind. She asked if I knew who she was and threatened to have my job. I tried to explain that her child wasn't at the bus stop and that I couldn't wait for kids who weren't there. I also pointed out that she had put all the children in danger with her reckless driving. She responded angrily, telling me not to lecture her and claiming that her taxes paid my salary. Just then, I heard sirens in the distance. The woman's face paled as she realized what she had done. She tried to run back to her car, but it was too late. Two police cars pulled up, blocking her escape. The officers quickly assessed the situation and approached the woman. She immediately started crying and playing the victim. She told the officer that I had left her child behind and that she was just trying to get me to stop. The officer informed her that they had received multiple reports of her chasing and ramming a school bus. They then placed her under arrest for reckless endangerment and assault with a deadly weapon. As they handcuffed her and led her away, I could hear her still protesting and threatening to sue everyone. The officers took statements from me and some of the older kids while we waited for another bus to come and take the children to school. In the end, it turned out the woman's child had missed the bus because they overslept. She had been trying to catch up to us to demand we go back and pick him up. Her entitlement and rage had nearly cost us all our lives. I was just grateful that no one had been seriously hurt. The woman faced multiple charges and lost her driver's license. I heard later that she had to do community service and attend anger management classes. As for me, I took a few days off to recover from the shock, but I was back on my route the following week. The kids greeted me with hugs and handmade thank you cards. It was a stark reminder of why I do this job, not for the money or recognition, but for the kids who depend on me to get them safely to and from school every day. My wife and I had just moved into our new house in a small cozy neighborhood. We were excited about our fresh start, but our dreams of a peaceful life were quickly shattered by our neighbor Karen. Karen's main issue was with the neighborhood playground, visible from both our houses. While we enjoyed seeing kids having fun, Karen seemed to despise it. Within our first 2 months there, she called the police on the kids 3 times, making up wild stories about drugs or violence to force a response. After the 3rd incident, I decided to confront Karen. I explained that, while I understood her frustration with the noise, the children had every right to play there. I asked her to stop calling the police without a valid reason. Karen responded angrily, insisting the children were up to no good despite lacking evidence. When I suggested she consider moving to a quieter location, she retorted that she had been there first and that we should leave. She then declared that if the police wouldn't act, she'd hire a private investigator to watch the children. Her response was absurd, but it gave me an idea. I called my unemployed brother-in-law and asked if he'd be interested in playing the role of a private investigator. After some hesitation, he agreed. We set up a fake PI company called Tommy's PI Office and got him looking the part. To sell it, I found the perfect vehicle for our operation, an old hearse, cheap at only $1,000. With everything in place, my brother-in-law parked the hearse in front of Karen's house and started his surveillance. He'd sit there for hours, sometimes with binoculars, other times pretending to take notes. At first, Karen seemed pleased, but as days passed, other neighbors started to notice and ask questions about the hearse parked on their street. Karen approached me, confused and agitated about why people kept coming to her house. I explained that they were likely curious about the private investigator she had hired, pointing out that a hearse wasn't exactly inconspicuous. As weeks went by, Karen became increasingly uncomfortable with the constant attention and whispers from neighbors. Finally, after about 2 weeks, she'd had enough. Karen approached the hearse and politely asked my brother-in-law to stop the investigation, saying it was no longer necessary. He questioned if she was sure, reminding her of her previous concerns. Karen quickly assured him that everything was fine, stating that the children were just playing and there was no need for further surveillance. Our plan had worked. Karen stopped complaining about the playground and the kids were free to play without fear of the police being called. The neighborhood returned to its peaceful state, and we even started to see Karen smile occasionally when she heard children laughing. Looking back, I can't help but chuckle at the situation. It was elaborate, but sometimes you need to go to extreme lengths to teach someone a lesson. Karen learned that her actions had consequences, and that sometimes the best way to deal with a little noise is to just let it be. As for me, I learned that creativity and a sense of humor can go a long way in solving neighborhood disputes. In the end, our unconventional approach not only resolved the immediate issue but also seemed to bring about a positive change in Karen's attitude. While it's not a method I'd recommend for every situation, in this case, it proved to be an effective way to restore peace to our little community and maybe even help Karen see the joy in children's laughter rather than just the noise. At 35, I've worked hard to build the life I always dreamed of. After college, I dedicated myself to my career, saving every penny with the goal of owning my own home. My brother Ted, now 42, took a different path. He dropped out of high school, struggled with substance abuse, and has been living with our parents for the past 6 years. Ted's situation has been a constant source of stress for our family. He refuses to work, disrespects our mother, and there are even rumors of him selling drugs. He has 2 children he never sees, and our parents have exhausted themselves trying to help him. Last year, I finally achieved my dream of buying a house. It was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a nice yard, in a quiet neighborhood. However, my joy was short-lived, as my family immediately began hinting that Ted should move in with me. For months, every conversation with my parents turned into a plea for me to take Ted in. I consistently refused, but the pressure was relentless. Last Tuesday, during yet another call about Ted, I finally caved. In a moment of weakness, I agreed to let him move in, but with strict conditions. He had to get a job, help with chores, and absolutely no drugs or alcohol in my house. We scheduled the move for Friday, but I immediately regretted my decision. When the day came, I made sure I wasn't home. My parents called, furious to find the house empty. I told them I had changed my mind and couldn't go through with it. The next day, I called to apologize and pretended to have a change of heart. I even claimed to have bought new furniture for Ted, suggesting they bring their old bed for him instead. They were thrilled, unaware that I was setting up a final lesson. On Sunday, they arrived again with Ted's belongings, only to find me absent once more. When my dad called, angry and confused, I firmly stated that this was my final decision. Ted would not be moving in with me. My dad accused me of jerking them around, and I acknowledged that was exactly what I had done. I explained that this was my way of making them understand how serious I was about not taking Ted in. I asked them to stop pushing the issue, as it wasn't going to happen. After a moment of stunned silence, my dad said they got the message and wouldn't ask again. I then tried to explain that this wasn't just about being selfish. I expressed my love for them but stated I couldn't enable Ted's behavior anymore. I insisted that he needed professional help, not just a new place to stay. I could hear my mom in the background asking what they were supposed to do with Ted now. I told them to do what they should have done years ago, set firm boundaries, insist he gets help, or let him find his own way. I offered my support but made it clear I couldn't be the solution to Ted's problems. Ending the call wasn't easy, and I knew there would be tension in the family for a while. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had taken control of the situation. My house remained my sanctuary, and I hoped this would be the wake-up call my family needed to stop enabling Ted's behavior. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. And maybe this would be the push Ted needed to finally get his life together. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was committed to maintaining my boundaries while still being there for my family in healthier ways. It was time for all of us to face the reality of Ted's situation and work towards real, lasting change, even if that meant some difficult conversations and decisions along the way.
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.